So good afternoon, everyone. Very glad to be back in GITEX. Actually, my first time here was 20 plus years ago. And back then, I was working in the biometric sector. And who would have known that 20 years later, back then was a lot smaller, the exhibition, that I'll be back here on a stage talking to people also on the topic of digital identity. So the topic of my talk is really about unleashing the data rebellion and how Web3 will change our lives. Well, what is Web3? I know this pavilion is about Web3, but what Web 2 versus Web 3 is a bit like 3G to 4G to 5G. It should be seamless. And whilst there are many, many terms, I think Web 3 really is about how we control and take back control of our own data. How do we manage our own data? How do organizations, governments manage their own data, taking back digital sovereignty for countries in a world where there is no borders? In the digital world, there are no borders. How do governments manage digital sovereignty? How do organizations share data without building silos, which is what Web 2 is today? How do companies currently benefiting from us, our data, as products versus the other way around, that we can benefit and monetize our own data so we are no longer the cabbages as commodities get sold, but more that we are able to benefit from our use of other services, of platform, of services provided to us rather than people benefiting of our data. So what does that mean in the world of Web3 around control, privacy? And of course, in order to do that, we need digital credentials. And in order to monetize that, we also need digital assets. Many of the folks here are on gaming, talking about in-game assets, pure digital assets. The speaker earlier was talking about Web3 fashion. Love that idea. And thinking through what this actually means, though, in order for us to benefit from that, to use it, to make it real life, rather than just in-game, but in the way that we interact today. How do I make sure I don't have to go into a shop to try something, to actually put it on my Instagram, to be able to walk around virtually in it? All of that requires a Web3 foundation. And that means blockchain enables it. Digital assets enables us to monetize it, pay for it, move it around, share it. And then our identity enables us to be able to do it securely, privately, and in a way that builds trust. Because in a more secure transaction, more private transaction, whether it's getting a job, whether it's opening a bank account, whether it's renting a car in real life, whether it's sharing my digital Pokemon, and that needs to know that it really came from me and it's not fake, it's not phishing. How many of you go through your emails and think, oh my God, this is phishing, this is fake, this didn't really come from my colleague or my company? It's hard to tell. So, and in physical life today, we still have to carry a passport, ID cards, so on and so forth. Well, that doesn't work in the digital world because there's no more pieces of paper. And in a transformation to Web3, it's not just about digitalizing or PDF pieces of paper. That's just suck. If we're able to order things that deliver to our door on Amazon, why should there be bits of data or pieces of paper that I need to go and get someone to say this is who I say I really am, and in order to go and rent a car? I mean, isn't it a bit ridiculous in this day and age that we still need deed processes and in-person verification when so much of our lives have changed through COVID, through social distancing, and so on? So that's not digitally native anymore. And in order for us to build into the next world, the next evolution of technology in Web3, a digital identity that is really digitally native, but enables the inclusion and usability for all people is really important. There are 5 elements. This is published through the World Economic Forum, which I was a former program advisor to on digital identity. And this is really about how do you enable an identity that's private, secure, but gives choice. If I want to share information about myself, I should be able to do it, but only the bits of information I want to share. For example, if I want to go into a pharmacy, in the UK, they ask you, what is your address? What is your date of birth? What is all of this? It's nobody else's business. What conditions I have. I should only be able to share yes or no and say, is that really the person? So the usefulness of an identity, the fit for purpose, the choice aspects are all very important. But identity is not just about humans. It's also companies. Is also things, all the IoT devices, whether it's cars or whether it's a camera, your fridge. So making sure that they're not ordering things that are not really you who's authorizing it, as well as, carbon, livestock, animals, things that are not often thought of. And lots of things are happening in digital identity, whether it's gaming, metaverse, national ID, so on and so forth. And what are the different things that holds the kind of capabilities, whether it's digital identity or digital assets? What are the underlying pillars from a technical perspective? Well, Web3 infrastructure is the first time in world technology that enables it. Today, PKI, public key infrastructure, provides for this. But it's in the Web3 infrastructure that you can share and open that up easily, that enables that kind of verification to take place. And Web3 users should have access to all of the common set of infrastructure, data ownership, better ownership, privacy, management, ability to only share the bits of data on selective disclosure, things like zero knowledge proofs to say yes or no only. So am I over 18? Am I over 21? Do I really live at that address? Do I really have that degree certificate? Common standards. Often a topic that's heavily argued, but it's critical. Without common standards, how do we share data? How do we make sure there's a level of interoperability? Privacy, of course, security. I come from a security background. It's critically important because it's assumed. No one would build a house without a door and a lock. Why would you build technology any differently? Similarly, common wallets. I have 1 handbag. I don't carry 6. And today, part of the wallet situation is that the user experience is horrible, especially Web3 wallets. You cannot have a wallet for identity, for different assets. How many wallets do I need on my phone? Or how many phones do I need? In the same way that I'm not going to carry 6 bags with me. The digital needs to think about the physical and what it means for the users rather than pure technology terms. And I'm a technologist, but understanding how people use the technology is critically important. The role of digital identity in an ecosystem, whether you're a central bank, whether you're a bank, an employer, an employee. Some of the use cases are, for example, in digital assets and digital identity together. UAE already is looking at something for Emirates ID and eKYC. With the ECB coming in and EIDAS 2.0, in EU, which will become the de facto standard for digital identity in Europe. I'm sure more countries are adopting that globally and will become a de facto for the world to be able to use identity in a digital way or in your phone. You will no longer need to take out multiple pieces of paper, lose multiple pieces of cardboard papers, and so on. And of course, your identity is only useful if it's accepted everywhere. If it's not accepted everywhere, like your Visa, MasterCard, why take it out? And that aspect of acceptance is not just your passport, your ID card, but it's also your things about your degree certificate, your training, your education credential, your employment credential in order for people to get a job. My degree hasn't changed for 20 years. or 20 plus years now. But it's not going to change for another 20 years. How many times do they need to call my university every time I need to work for new clients? I'm sure the person at admissions have more things to do than answering the same questions over and over again. Of course, many, many use cases, as I mentioned, with education, but also in other things like Web3 gaming, on digital fashion that the other speaker mentioned. In-game digital assets, making sure that asset really belongs to you. How do you trade it? How do you ensure it's the right person associated with that right asset? I was shocked. I'm a bit old now, so thinking through all of these kind of digital assets, some of them in games cost a huge amount of money. You don't want it to be fake. You want it to come from the real gamer, the person who dropped that to maybe a hot drop in a game, making sure that it really came from that person. That organization, that entity is really a limited edition. Those kind of things are important. And therefore, the identity of the organization that sent it out is not a phishing scam. The identity of the individual that sent it out, the trading of ownerships, and making sure that that is visible to all, that needs to see it. And just like a car with a service book, you can sell the car for a lot more if it has a good logbook and a service history. No different than any other asset, and therefore digital asset. Same thing with a painting. If you have a guarantee of its lifetime since it was painted and verified and so on, digital assets will become the same. And in future, that is how the world will operate. And thinking of Web3, thinking of who issued this asset. Are they going to become famous later on? Are they going to be the next big artist, next big recording artist, next big gamer, next big influencer? All of that matters. Similarly, fractional ownership. I know NFT was very big, and it will continue to be a trend going forward with hopefully much less of the noise. And thinking through how do we all want to say have fractional ownership of something? For lots of people who want to invest, it's very hard to get into big funds because big asset management funds, because the initial the initial investment is very large. But imagine a crowdsourcing model. Imagine that you can have fractional ownership, smaller ownership of something that can be divided down, can be shared, can get funding much easier, whether it's for investment for new products, new service, new type of different investment is something to think about that only Web3 can enable. And of course, the secondary market, whether it's handbags, watches, cars, and lots of fakes around. How do we make sure that the wine that you're buying, the handbag that you're buying, the watch that you're buying on the secondary market can get the value that it deserves? It's only by having ability to control and to understand and to validate openly that information is real. And of course, lower barrier to entry to lots and lots of traditional things today that are very hard to get into because you don't have an identity. You can't get in because it's the barrier is too high. The thing that I mentioned around asset management and investing is massive. It's a big market. So what do we do here at nChain? We are a blockchain company, and we have lots of products. One of the largest IP companies in the world, as Lexus mentioned, and lots of our capabilities is on the most scalable of blockchains in the world. And with that, some of the things that we'll be doing is think of what are the components of Web3 that supports and use the most scalable blockchain in the world to be able to deliver digital identity, signing, document signing, rather than using existing vendors. You can pay less and have provability that it is on chain, that an event took place. So many of our products are coming out, and some are targeted at more techies like myself and like many of you here, that enables that you don't need knowledge of blockchain. You don't need to be a blockchain expert to benefit on to use Web3 technology. And it's really about usability and catering to different parts of the technology stack enabled to benefit from the power of blockchain. And with that, whilst the internet in what is known as Web 2 today, or even Web 1, was really created without an identity layer, set by Sir Tim Berners-Lee, in Web 3, a trusted digital identity and digital assets will both be required in order for the digital world to evolve and benefits realized. Just like identity, you wouldn't take it out if it's not accepted everywhere, same as payments. But if you can't do anything with the payments and can't verify who you are, then it's also a bit pointless. Payments need use cases, identity needs payments to survive. So fundamentally, just like you open a bank account, just like you do large transactions that you need to verify your identity and have a layer of trust, which many governments are building in terms of trust framework and the legal, the regulatory environment in order for this to take place. The same needs to happen for identity. And it's not just the world of Web3 where there's digital assets, whether it's in-game, whether it's in currencies, and so on. But the digital identity aspects of this needs to go hand in hand with the digital assets in order for the full Web3 benefits to be realized. Thank you.
Bitcoin mining, Bitcoin wallet, blockchain, stablecoins, MetaNet, the evolution of money. Everybody is talking about Bitcoin today, but what exactly is it? Learn the basics from experts. Learn what Bitcoin is, how it works, and why it matters. Blockchain 101, your ultimate guide to the fundamentals of blockchain.